Hey everybody, welcome back to One Mic, and today I'm here to do something a little different. So instead of breaking down an episode of HBO's Task, I want to talk specifically about the mole situation on the task force, who it is, how the show's been presenting it, and why my take on it might have shifted a little bit after rewatching episode 4 and listening to other perspectives, but it's less that my perspective has shifted and more like I feel like I need to explain myself a little better. So if you watch my episode 4 breakdown, you know I said it pretty definitively that Kathleen is the mole. And someone in the comments said I was jumping to conclusions. Like, what proof you got that that's the case? I mean, the episode gives plenty of proof, but admittedly, like this person said, I didn't fully lay it out, so they didn't have anything to argue with. So I want to lay out not just the proof that Kathleen is the mole, because that's really like a tertiary concern to me. What I want to do is explain the way I view how these whodunits frame potential suspects and why they did Kathleen a little bit differently than everyone else, and how the revelation of who the mole is entirely unimportant to me, and that fueled my reasoning for believing it was Kathleen. I know that sounds like a lot, but I'm going to break it down, and it's not going to take a long time. So, watching episode 4, the show is basically screaming it at me, and I'm pretty good at spotting like fake outs, but after rewatching and reading some of the conversations out there, I realized it might be worth doing this separate video to just really dig into how the show has been handling the mole situation. So let me start by talking about structure for a second. Look at a show like Only Murders in the Building. There's a pattern. Every episode points a finger at a specific suspect, and they give you, subtle clues, and then they usually end the episode with one very, very overt clue that almost makes it difficult for you to not believe that person committed the crime. But every episode goes that way. That suspect is never the one who did it, and then in the end, they reveal the real culprit as someone that we never suspected, they never hinted at, and there were no clues that this person even did it. At this point, I've just learned to watch Only Murders in the Building for the entertainment, instead of trying to solve the mystery like I did in the first couple of seasons. But to bring that back to Task, they don't quite operate that same way, but it definitely used some of the same tools in pointing fingers, both subtly and overtly at different characters. Lizzie's look suspicious at times. Grasso's look suspicious at times. And if the pattern holds, I wouldn't be surprised if Aaliyah looks suspicious in like the next episode. Especially with that weird little, again, that marksmanship competition. Like, that felt so strange to me that came up at that time. I feel like it's going to matter somehow. Maybe it's somehow going to matter in how they throw a little suspicion Aaliyah's way. But here's where episode 4 was different. The shit with Kathleen was not subtle at all. Like, that wasn't hints. It was like spinning arrows with the headlights revolving around the outside of the arrow, and the arrow spinning, and it's pointing at a big giant sign, and that sign is pointing at Kathleen, and it's flashing with neon words. It says, Kathleen is the fucking mole. Like, you had like real obvious moments, like after Tom tells her about the mole, she immediately picks up the phone and calls someone and is like, we might have a problem. Like, that's an obvious one. Obvious clue. Then you have like less obvious, but still pretty glaring, ominous like cuts to Kathleen making suspicious faces in the background at questionable times. And when you raise the question of how did Jason get Ray's phone, the person doing those things I just mentioned seems like a pretty good answer to that question. But what do I say all the time when it comes to these whodunits? And in general, it's never Occam's razor. It's never the simplest answer, or in this case, the obvious person. So why in this case did I accept Kathleen as the mole when I usually wouldn't accept something that obvious? Honestly, well, first, because again, the way they hinted at Kathleen was different from how they did it with the others. The others felt like red herrings. Kathleen felt like, here's your answer. But from my perspective, Kathleen being the mole takes the least interesting aspect of this show, the identity of the mole, and makes it interesting. Why? Well, what's interesting about Kathleen being the mole is the fallout. Tom becoming more and more distrusting of his team, completely overlooking the actual mole, and then looking at how that distrust poisons the dynamics within the task force. That's the story I want to watch unfold. And we see it all throughout episode 4 after they all but say Kathleen is the mole, there are shots of Tom staring at his team while Kathleen is behind him looking like she's up to no good. Like, in short, like, I've used this term once before, but like, the language of cinema was essentially telling me that yes, Kathleen is the mole, but it's not about that. It's about how Kathleen being the mole affects the team dynamic. And I'll be real, the ending of episode 4 confused me initially. A lot of people said the same thing. But the second I slotted Kathleen into the role of mole, it all kind of clicked. Suddenly it all made sense. And that made me even more confident that the episode wanted me to see her as the mole. Which is why the idea that Kathleen might just be another red herring, another bait and switch is troubling to me. Because that makes the mole's identity more important than I feel it needs to be or should be. Like, it elevates the reveal and the twist instead of elevating the consequences and the fallout from it. And if they go, oops, psych, it's somebody else after like giving really very like direct clues, like, I think that undercuts what makes this story so compelling. So, like, yeah, maybe I jumped to a conclusion faster than I normally would have, but the way they presented Kathleen in episode 4 as the mole was so different from how they teased it regarding Lizzie and Grasso. And again, for me, the real payoff is not the reveal of who the mole is. It's watching Tom grow more and more suspicious of his team while completely ignoring the person that's actually pulling the strings, standing right fucking next to him. That's where the drama is. That's where the tension is. And that's the twist that I want to see play out. But what do you think? Let me know what you think in the comments. Again, now you've got my full perspective on the mole situation. Do you think Kathleen is the mole? Yes or no? Is this just another fake out? And more importantly, do you even care who the mole is? Because I sure as shit don't. Or are you more invested in how Tom's suspicion is going to break down his team over the course of these final 3 episodes? Which that's what's interesting to me. So let me know what you think in the comments. As always, again, we're wrapping it up quick. Like the channel, subscribe, share your social media, join the Discord, join the conversation. And until Sunday's episode, peace.